between difference and dysfunction. And we haven't really attended to that. We've got a number of people who are working in the laboratories at Berkeley or around teaching courses who would be perfect examples of behavior disordered individuals. In fact, they may be, I don't know. They spend their time in labs, they have no use for people, they see students because they have to, and they give grades sometimes. I spent 2 years as the ombudsman for the university, and I used to get to know these people and talk to them. And they didn't pay me anything extra for it, but don't assume that that behavior disordered people are failures. Some of them are very successful, and they go into fields which take them away from people and keep them sort of separate, and they like that way. They may be in fields that you come in contact with, and sometimes you don't. But we cannot assume that because an individual acts in a way that's different, that he is behavior disordered. You have to be very careful to allow the wide range of behaviors in our society to be acceptable as such without putting any label on somebody. So when you see two people, there's a Canadian film called Shyness, where they show 3 shy children, and only 2 of them are okay, the other one is not. But when you look at them, they all look the same in terms of their behavior. But when you go beneath the surface, you find that 2 of them have degrees of freedom. That a shy individual can get out of his shyness at times, but the individual who is withdrawn because of an emotional problem does not have the degrees of freedom to change. He is frozen, or she is frozen in that position. And that's a different kind of thing. It's like the phenotype and the genotype. You can't really tell by looking at the phenotype what the genotype is all about. So you have to support that proposition, and you have to be clear about it. Don't get pushed into the position of saying, okay, if a kid behaves this way, he's a behavior disordered individual. He may be an impassioned and very happy, creative child. And we have lots of creative kids who get into deep trouble because they simply are unique individuals, and they want to do things their way, just like our kids always want to do things their way. See, everybody has a creative kid in that sense. Okay, that's to help a child with a problem. You must find out exactly what's causing his or her difficulty before you can help him or her. That's a reflection. Now, my response to that is, if you believe that, you'll believe anything. It is unbelievable how much time we spend trying to find out what caused a particular problem. Who cares what caused it? It's long since gone. There's not a thing you can do about it. It's good to know that these things happen. Of course, if you're in Los Angeles, you'd know that everybody had minimal brain damage. I mean, that's part of the syndrome from ingesting too much smog. There was a time when everybody in Los Angeles, all the kids who had problems, had minimal brain damage. Now only half of them have them. But if you want to go back, I sat in a seminar with a group at Harvard a number of years ago where they were discussing a case, and somebody went into extreme detail about this particular case. And we knew everything about the family, about background, the medical, the social, and so on and so forth. And finally came out to the point where somebody said, oh, right, he says, we know all these things now. What do we do about it? At the point that you face the child, there's nothing much you can do about that. You have to deal with the child and his ecological relations as it is in the present condition. And what you're looking for are, where are his strengths? Where can you intervene? Where can you stick in a lever that's going to make a difference? Causes may be historically interesting and meaningful to parents and others, but to helpers, I would rather spend my time trying to find out what sorts of ego strengths does this child have, and where do you start with him or her in developing a kind of more effective learning process? And this is what Nick Hobbs and Bill Rhodes and the others in the RIAD program were trying to do and still trying to do. All right, reflection number 8. It's not uncommon for organizations or institutions set up to serve clients to end up serving their own needs. I don't trust organizations and I don't trust agencies sometimes. And a good example is Scott's book on the making of blind men, in which he surveyed what were the needs of blind people in the United States. There were close to 1 million, and most of them were elderly blind, mostly women, elderly blind. And when he started to study where are the services being offered by agencies serving the blind, where do you suppose they were? Well, for young people. Why? Because young people are more interesting. And agencies that serve the blind can set up a kind of a holding pattern on a young blind child whereby the agency serves its own particular needs by serving that blind child. So agencies don't necessarily try to serve the clients or serve the society per se. You have to be very careful and then look at what their goals are and how they serve the particular needs. And, it's like, remember the bridge over the River Kwai, Colonel Donaldson, who started out being subjected to torture because he would not help build the bridge for the Japanese. And what happened? He ended up building the bridge and defending it. How did that come about? The same way agencies lose their goals and they begin to submerge their own goals submerge the goals that they were intended for into their own particular goals. And we all do that. Schools do that. Agencies do that. You have to be very careful to look at what you're doing. Is this something for me personally, or is it something which is going to help a particular client?